So you can see this plane in front of me. You can plainly see it. It arrived here the other day from a friend, and came in this box, and this was sort of angled up, and I thought, what in the world is that? And then when I opened it up, this plane was really neatly packed with plywood all around it to protect it, and I don't believe there's any damage the way it came. You can see from the pictures that it was very dry. The blade he had protected with some tape, but it's got a little minor rust, but it's a beautiful thick blade. It's going to be really good. The wedge had 2 checks in it, or cracks, so I glued them back together, and I think they're in good shape. Do some minor cleaning on it just to bring out the wood grain a little bit. Be using a scraper. On the checking, I waited for it to acclimate to the house and its environment in the shop and everything to our location, and then I used some glue to fill whatever checks there were. And there was enough movement in the wood that I was able to clamp it on both sides and bring it together nicely. Filled some other checks and took off the paint that was on it with a scraper, and I'll probably do some more scraping down just to get the dirt off. Use some denatured alcohol to any kind of shellac on there, anything that we can get to soften up or go away, and then we'll get to working on some of the other parts. The blade needs work, and then we need to flatten the bottom and get that so that when it planes right. It's not in terrible shape. This is what most of it kind of looks like. There's the bottom. I think the throat has been adjusted wider because it's not perfectly straight in there, and I see some marks from some cutting that's happened before. And the bottom is not flat. I put it on a surface to see, and there's a bit of a wobble in it, you see. So I haven't come to a decision on how I'm going to do it yet, but I will most likely replane the bottom, so it'll lose a little bit of height there, but I don't think it'll be enough to affect it. But we'll start with getting the blade and everything right. I think there's some cupping here too, a little bit right there. Yeah. A little bit of cupping, so high on this side, low on this side. We'll just go through that, and here's an area that I've already cleaned up, and it's pretty nice. I'm happy with it. A little bit of linseed oil on there too will help. So that's it. I'm going to break it up into little segments, and I'll show you some pictures of what I did up to this point, and then we'll start from there. Thanks. So you can see where there's been some checking in here, and it's still not filled here on the bottom, and there's a little checking on this piece of wood here on the handle or tote that's so dry, and that could be an issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub some glue into that little crack, and I'm going to do some here just like I did up here, clamping it together and giving it time to expand and contract. I used Tight Bond 3, and then I'll have to get into here and start talking about how to flatten this out, because we definitely have some cupping issues. This plane was well used, and I think predominantly in the middle, so it's not so much that we have cupping as we have just wear in the center, so we need to flatten that out. So the first thing I did was to take this scraper and scrape the top of this plane here to expose the high and the low spots. And what it does is it kind of burnishes in the areas that are high, and you can see then the areas here and here that are hollow. So if you had a board that you were running on this, that's where you would get the wear and the compression. But there's also has been some cupping. But so after I did the scraping to determine those spots, I chose to use the Veritas shooting plane because it's got a nice width, a good weight, and I can do a micro fine shaving. And what I did was I just hit those areas, and like I say, the shaving that I'm trying to get is not deep at all. I want to control that. And what I'm doing is I'm running across the two high spots so that so I'm working the whole thing flat. If I were to go here, only half of it, like that, then I would be taking down one side, and I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that it's the body of the plane is spanning both, so that when I get a cut, and you can see I am, that it's remaining flat to that side. I don't want to take off more on one side than the other because I want to keep it going down until I start seeing this middle section. Here you can see the plane is taking off these areas that are light, and still there's this middle section and this middle section, so I want to bring them down just to where I am starting to get to that point, but not necessarily, and I'll make that decision later, not necessarily taking off any more of that than I need to. So now you can see I've taken down, I haven't gone deep. All these filings or all these shavings are super thin. But I now no longer have any light across there, and there's no wobble. So this is nice and flat. I'll check with some winding sticks to make sure they're not cupped at all, but I think that I've solved that issue, and you can see how much I've taken off. It's not a lot, and there's still a little bit, there's no light, but still a little dark area that I haven't taken off right there in front of the mouth. And but I don't want to take off any more until I get the blade worked on, recut, and make sure that the throat is parallel or perpendicular to the side and parallel to what it needs to be. So we'll leave it at that. So after checking it for square, this way, off the two sides seem to be parallel, because when I go this way, I get the same light gap on this side, and when I do this, I get the same thing on that side. So this side here needs to be taken down about a 32nd or so, just to get it straight across. It's still showing pretty flat, but that means that it's angled a little bit. So instead of using the Veritas, I've switched to the number 8, and it gives a really nice, good, clean shaving. And as long as I keep the bottom semi-skewed to this going across, I'm pretty much guaranteed that I'm still staying in the flat. And you see I'm not taking off any really large shavings, and I'm just going to do a couple of passes, then set it down and recheck again to see what my progress is. And it really appears to be just in this little edge. So I need to take a little bit off of this edge here to bring it down. So I'll just come a little more to this side here and run just a hair off that. And then I'll feather it back into the rest of it. And hopefully that will do it. Don't want to go too far without rechecking. And that is now a thing of beauty. Has a little bit here that needs to come out, but not much. Right in the middle here. So we'll just run that once. And see, I'm not taking a lot. Just, and then see, it doesn't take much over there because that's not where it's got the issue. So it'll stop cutting right there. Check it again, but I think that we are beautiful. I hold it up so that the light can shine behind the square, and it makes it easier to read it. That's why. Nice. Very good. So now we can give this a good soaking of linseed oil. These checks I filled with glue earlier, so they're pretty good. So we'll go to town. Removing some of the dirt with the mineral spirits, just to kind of clean that off. And then see a lot of nicks and stuff. They won't hurt the value of the plane as far as having that. There's a little paint here and stuff. So what I do is I take a card scraper and we just go down the side of it. And try to get some of this dirt off. We're not trying to change anything terribly about the plane. You see here, you can see the kind of dirt that's just built up over the years. Now I'm not using sandpaper because I don't want to scratch it all up. I don't want to cut into it terribly. I'm trying to just scrape off the dirt and the paint that's on the top surface. Something there, some of the things here. And this side's interesting because it's very flat, but and that's why you're not seeing areas that are scraped more than others too much. Whereas on the other side, we had some evidence of areas that were higher. Scraping, while it takes the dirt off, it really pushes that grain down. And almost acts like a burnisher. But you can see the kind of mess we're taking off. And we're not going to do too much more than that. There's no real reason to. I don't want this plane coming back to the raw finish. I just want to get a lot of this dirt off of it. And there's plenty of it to get off, you can see here. And now I can see the color of the grain coming up now. Once this comes up, I can see that quarter sawn raise in here. And you can see the stuff that's coming off. So I'm not going to do too much of this more. I don't think we need to. And so we'll give it another little rub down with the mineral spirits. See how fast that evaporates, but that's one of the things that's good about it. Just gets any oils and stuff off. And then we're going to give it a good coating of linseed oil and allow that to soak in. And then we'll probably do a finish coat of boiled linseed oil, but we'll see how that goes. There's some damage here, but I'm not going to even deal with that. I'm just going to clean it off. I'm not going to try to repair that. But the bottom's looking good. There you can really see the rays. That's nice. So you're going to do the same thing to clean up the top here. Just gentle scraping. Here you can really see how it burnishes the finish. So while the plane soaks in this linseed oil, I'll get to work on the blade. And I wanted to point out something about this blade. See, it's tapered, and it's in very good shape, even though it's very dark here, as you can see. That's going to clean up nicely. And this is the important part. It's down here. And I'm not sure. I haven't checked this angle yet to see what it's at. But I'll have to do that and see to make sure that it cuts right. But there's a corner that's nicked out of here. And it looks to me like I might lose about a 1/16 of an inch across here grinding that out. I'm not sure I'm going to do that yet. We'll make that decision when we get it cleaned up a little bit more and flatten this back a little bit to see where the line is as far as the hardened steel is. And because what I might do is, because I don't think I'm going to use this as a smoother, you know, on a big thing, I'm thinking that maybe what I'll do is, instead of taking that notch out, I'll just sharpen across here. But let's take a look at it with a square. And if I go off this side here, it doesn't really matter, because either way, what I might do is I might cut this on a, I might just cut that on an angle across so I don't lose so much, and try to get out as much of this as I can. There is a little bit of lateral movement in here, but there isn't a terrible lot. But we'll see. I'll take that off, and we'll see how this turns out. So hello and welcome back. I sharpened the blade, and surprisingly enough, it wasn't far off of the 25 degrees that I like to use on it. And I tested this angle, and everything seemed to be fine. I used a ball peen hammer to knock over some of this mushrooming on the head to flatten it out, and then I took a file to it and flattened it some more so that I could clean this top of the blade. And I used this scraper, razor edge, to clean off the rust off the blade, and then some sandpaper to just clean up the rest of the rust, and then went over to the bench and sharpened things, put it in here and tuned it up. Setting the blade was not too easy, but what I did was I set it down on a piece of wood, and I put a shim under here, and then I used this rawhide mallet to tap it down just till it touched. And there were a few times where I had to edge it back. I don't like hitting a plane to move the iron. I'd rather just move it back and start again. But it's now giving me a fairly good cut. This board is maple and it's not very flat, so it's cutting just in, not completely across. It's got a hollow in it there. There you can see that's on the flat. It's pretty smooth, actually. Let's see what it does on an edge, which is what I think this plane was used for a lot, because that's how it had developed such a hollow. But there's something kind of satisfying about that. This is amazingly smooth. Maybe I can bring it up to the camera and show you better. I'll give you a close-up. I'll bring the camera in a little bit so you can see it working. So it's giving me a good shaving. Now, this has had several coatings of linseed oil put on it, and it's just starting to dry. I'll let it dry a few more days, and then I will wax this bottom and the sides with some Alfie Shine, give it a little bit of a shine up to it. But for now, I did have to clean up the edge of this here because it was kind of jagged. I don't think that matters too much. But you can see it's giving a nice shaving. And I think you can see the throat, the opening is not terribly big. It's kind of a nice size. And as I said, the shaving seems to be very good. So this has turned out to be a nice user. On the front of this plane is the number 21 and Scioto Works, or Scioto if it was Italian, but it's made in Ohio by the Ohio Tool Company. And around the late 1800s, the Ohio Tool Company used to use prison labor from the penitentiary there. But there's a discussion as to whether or not this plane was actually made by prison labor because of the time period. Now, the Ohio Tool Company, what they said was that this plane, the Scioto Works, was their secondary brand. It had a cheaper wood, but the workings of it was all pretty much the same as their higher quality. But this is a nice quality hard beech quarter sawn, and so I see nothing wrong with it. This is a little rough here, but now it isn't. I did have to repair this little part. I didn't repair it. All I did was reshape it so that it wouldn't give you a splinter when you grabbed it. But for being a tool that's approximately 130 years old, I think it's in pretty good shape, and it's ready to go back to work. And I think all the checks on it have been solved, the issues. It's holding up fairly well. And I have to say thanks again to the gentleman that sent it to me. I appreciate it. It's a nice learning experience tuning one of these up. And I know there are quite a few people that have these sitting on their shelves, hopefully not turned into lamps, but maybe they just don't know enough about them to be able to try them out. Maybe they were their grandfathers or something, but look at the job it's doing. There's no reason not to use them. And this is, as I said, maple, so it's fairly hard. I'm not sure of the exact age of this, but a lot of people have these sitting on their shelves and admiring them as a piece of a relic type thing. But in actuality, it didn't take me more than a couple of hours to play with it, to sharpen it, to repair some of the checks and things. And it's very comfortable to the hand. It does a beautiful job, particularly of the jointing. But on the flat surface of the maple as well, it gave us good shavings and flattened the board nicely. A little bit of sharpening of the blade and tuning it up, getting rid of the rust. And here it is back working again. So I would suggest that any of you that have these, either inherited or it's maybe given to them, or they see them in a yard sale, snatch them up, have fun with them, make some shavings, and thanks for coming to the shop and sharing this little treasure with me. And thanks to the gentleman who sent it to me to play with. You guys take care, stay safe, and we'll see you next time in the shop.